The story of Prophet Isaac. The story of Prophet Isaac Ishak, peace be upon him, is a profound narrative of promise, faith, and divine fulfillment. His life, closely intertwined with that of his father, Prophet Abraham Ibrahim, peace be upon him, stands as a vital link in the covenant God established with his chosen people. Drawing from the Book of Genesis New International Version, here is a complete storytelling account of Isaac's journey, connected deeply to Abraham's legacy. The promise of a son, Genesis 15:4-6, 17:15-21, 18:1-15. Long before Isaac's cry filled the tents of Abraham, the aged patriarch walked the dusty plains of Canaan, carrying in his heart the promise of God. Though Sarah's womb had been barren for decades, God declared to Abraham, "Your very own son shall be your heir," Genesis 15:4. Abraham believed, and God credited it to him as righteousness, Genesis 15:6. Years later, God reaffirmed his covenant. Abram became Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai was renamed Sarah, princess. God promised, "I will surely give you a son by her," Genesis 17:16. Abraham laughed in astonishment, suggesting Ishmael, his son by Hagar, might suffice. But God made it clear, "Your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him," Genesis 17:19. At Mamre, 3 mysterious visitors, angels in disguise, repeated the promise. Sarah, eavesdropping, laughed inwardly at the absurdity, but God gently rebuked her. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Genesis 18:14. Thus, Isaac's story began with laughter, a name and a legacy both born from faith stretched to its limits. Connection to Abraham. Isaac's coming fulfilled God's extraordinary promise that Abraham would become the father of many nations, despite human impossibility. The birth of Isaac, Genesis 21:1-7. At the appointed time, amid the golden heat of Canaan's sun, Sarah conceived. Abraham, now 100 years old, held his newborn son, marveling at God's faithfulness. The Lord did for Sarah what he had promised, Genesis 21:1-2. They named him Isaac, meaning he laughs, a name celebrating astonishment and divine joy. Sarah proclaimed, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me," Genesis 21:6. Abraham circumcised Isaac on the 8th day, adhering to God's command, Genesis 17:12. 21:4, binding him into the sacred covenant, yet joy was tinged with tension. Ishmael, the son of Hagar, mocked Isaac, prompting Sarah to demand their expulsion. Though distressed, Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away, after God's assurance that Ishmael too would father a nation, Genesis 21:12-13. Isaac remained, the sole heir of the promise. Connection to Abraham. Isaac's birth initiated the specific lineage through which God's covenant would pass, distinguishing him from Ishmael. The binding of Isaac the Akedah, Genesis 22:1-19. Years passed, and then came the supreme test of Abraham's faith. God commanded, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and sacrifice him as a burnt offering," Genesis 20:2. Abraham's heart must have shattered, yet early the next morning he obeyed, journeying toward Moriah. Isaac carried the wood himself, questioning innocently, "The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb?" Abraham, choking down his grief, answered, "God himself will provide the lamb, my son," Genesis 22:7-8. Upon the mountain, Abraham bound Isaac and raised the knife, but heaven intervened. An angel cried out, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," Genesis 20:12. A ram, caught by its horns in a thicket, was offered instead. Because of Abraham's obedience, God reiterated his promise, "Through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed," Genesis 20:18. Isaac's sparing became a living testament to faith rewarded. Connection to Abraham. This event solidified Abraham's reputation as the supreme model of obedience, with Isaac foreshadowing themes of sacrifice and redemption in later theology. Isaac's early life and Abraham's legacy. Genesis 24:1-4, 25-5:11. As Isaac matured, Abraham took steps to secure his future and protect the covenant. After Sarah's death at 127 years old, Genesis 23:1, Abraham tasked his chief servant with finding a wife for Isaac, but not among the Canaanites. "Go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac," Abraham instructed. Genesis 24:4. In Mesopotamia, the servant found Rebekah, the granddaughter of Abraham's brother Nar. Rebekah agreed to marry Isaac, and upon her arrival, Isaac took her into his mother's tent, marrying and loving her deeply. Genesis 24:67. Before Abraham's death at 175, he bequeathed all he had to Isaac. Genesis 25:5, while giving gifts to his other sons. After Abraham's passing, God's blessings continued upon Isaac, who settled near Beer Lahai Rua. Genesis 25:11. Connection to Abraham. Abraham's careful arrangement for Isaac's marriage and inheritance preserved the divine covenant through Isaac's lineage. Isaac's family and personal trials. Genesis 25:19-28. 26:111. Isaac's marriage to Rebekah faced early hardship. Like Sarah, Rebekah was barren. Isaac prayed fervently, and God answered. Rebekah conceived twins who struggled within her. God explained, "Two nations are in your womb. The older will serve the younger." Genesis 25:23. She gave birth to Esau and Jacob. Isaac favored Esau, a skillful hunter, while Rebekah loved Jacob, a quiet, thoughtful man. Genesis 25:28. During a famine, Isaac went to Gerar. There, like his father Abraham, he feared for his life and told the Philistines that Rebekah was his sister. Genesis 26:7-11. When Abimelech discovered the truth, he protected them, recognizing God's favor upon Isaac. Connection to Abraham. Isaac's experiences mirrored Abraham's. Both faced famines, fears, and divine protection, emphasizing the covenant's continuity. Isaac's prosperity and conflicts. Genesis 26:12-25. Despite trials, Isaac prospered greatly. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich, and his wealth continued to grow. Genesis 26:12-13. His success bred jealousy among the Philistines, who filled his wells with dirt. Forced to move, Isaac reopened the wells his father had dug and dug new ones, often facing disputes over ownership. Finally, at Beersheba, God appeared, reassuring him, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you." Genesis 26:24. Isaac built an altar there, worshiping the Lord and establishing peace with Abimelech. Connection to Abraham. Isaac's life illustrated patience and trust in divine promises, just as Abraham had shown throughout his journey. Isaac's later years and the blessing of Jacob. Genesis 27:140. In old age, with failing eyesight, Isaac prepared to bless Esau, his firstborn. He instructed Esau to hunt and prepare a meal, after which he would give the blessing. Genesis 27:1-4. However, Rebekah intervened, recalling God's prophecy that the older would serve the younger. She dressed Jacob in Esau's garments and prepared a meal. Jacob approached his father, pretending to be Esau. Though suspicious, Isaac was deceived by the feel of the goat skins and the scent of Esau's clothes. He blessed Jacob. "May nations serve you, and peoples bow down to you." Genesis 27:29. When Esau returned and the truth emerged, Isaac trembled but did not revoke the blessing, recognizing God's sovereign choice. Esau received a lesser blessing, and Jacob fled to avoid his brother's wrath. Connection to Abraham. Isaac's blessing upon Jacob ensured that the covenant passed as God intended, further securing Abraham's legacy. Isaac's death and legacy. Genesis 35:27-29. Isaac lived a full life, dying at the age of 180. Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. Genesis 35:29. His sons, Esau and Jacob, came together to bury him at Mamre, a final gesture of reconciliation. Through Isaac, the promises made to Abraham continued, and from Jacob the 12 tribes of Israel would arise, the very people God had foretold.